Show me, show you, CoCoBan. It's the CoCo Show, episode 40. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the CoCo Show. I'm John.
And I'm Aaron.
And today, Aaron, we're talking about CoCoBan.
Oh,
yeah.
Sounds like a candy to me.
It does. Well, when you first heard the name CoCoBan, what is that? Do you think candy?
Yeah. Or like some sort of racing thing, like
like the Autobahn.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. What if you combine both candy and racing?
I'd be a professional racer. That's what you'd get. That's how it'd go down. That'd be awesome. Listen, Coke, bonbons, those are good eating.
I don't know what a bonbon is.
That's a little chocolate deal, Lots of ladies eat them when they're watching soap operas. At least that's what the TV told me, back in the 70s. But they're tasty. And so if you had a cocoa flavor, which is sort of chocolate anyway, you'd be in business.
Yeah. It's funny. Oh, there's that one candy game that Nick Marentes made. Remember that? Jelly Donut Station?
Well, no, I don't remember the name of that.
Well, that was something like that, right?
Nick has made so many games. He may have made a game called Candy, what was it, Union Station, whatever you call it.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll get a chance to ask him live when we are at the 31st last CoCo Fest. Did you know, Aaron, that we're going to CoCo Fest this year?
I've heard that. I've heard that we're going to be going to CoCo Fest. We never go nowhere, if I'm honest. We were so lazy, we just had your own show. I guess you do go to Ireland occasionally, but I never go nowhere. So this will be exciting. We're going to go up north and visit all of our buddies from the CoCo, the various CoCo maniacs that are all around. We're going to join them. I don't know if we're going to fit in very well, Bo. We're going to have to get more obsessed.
It'll be interesting. I consider myself to be part of the nation, the CoCo Nation.
Yeah.
And
you're the drunk part.
Every Saturday, until I either fall asleep, get trashed, or they start an interview, I am part of the nation. And so if not fully, I at least will be able to recognize some of the faces,
Yeah, it'll be neat. I'm wondering if some of my favorites are going to be there. I'm assuming like L. Curtis Boyle will be there. Maybe I know Nick won't be there, obviously, but I'm hoping my good pal Paco Atake is going to be there.
I hope he's there too.
He needs a good beating, so I'm going to take care of him.
Listen, I hope the CoCo crew's there so we can start something, because it's been about time that we really start to do a Jets versus Sharks thing and take them down.
See, the problem is I'm down with the CoCo crew. I don't have a problem with it because I was on their show way, way back, and they were super nice to me. And they also told me secretly that I was great, and so I appreciated that. And so then I ended up getting on the other CoCo show. They were nice too, but so they were both nice to me. So I have no animosity.
What happened with the Ram board will never be forgotten.
Can you imagine the two CoCo gangs having a turf battle? That'd be the most hilarious thing. All these old bearded guys coming at each other. What are they gonna do? Yield sticks of Ram? Try to give each other a nasty scrape?
You could brain somebody with a Gimme X, man.
You know what you need to get? One of those multi-cart things, the big metal deals.
You
can whack a sucker with one.
That's what your weapon of choice is going to be.
But when you've got one of those, you're the king. Yeah. King of all the other geeks.
Well, you are. I mean, when you walk in there, I'm telling you, man, people are going to start to go, it's Aaron. Aaron's here.
Oh, yeah. They're going to come at me, all right.
And then they're going to loft you just like at a wedding on the chair, and they're going to crown you King CoCo.
I'll tell you what, there better be some real studly, muscular CoCo fans at this thing.
Your average CoCo guy, studly and muscular.
That's we're killing our own people here because we're both blobby marshmallows too, and we're both old.
All this is to say we will fit right in.
Yeah, there you go.
So if you would like to join us, please come out to the last ever CoCo Fest. Every year it's the last one. And it is at the end of April. I'm pulling up the date right now. This is going to be at April the 21st through the 23rd. Actually, I guess the Friday is not technically part of it unless you're a Binda like we are.
Or a cool guy. Yeah, what are we selling, Boat? What do we got?
Look at this, man.
What, that's what's for sale?
Always is.
I hope Frank's not involved in that. Maybe you can recap you.
So please come out to the CoCo Fest. We'd love to see you. If you are going, say hi. Make sure that you pick up some complimentary Amigos and CoCo Show swag while you're there. You know, Aaron, speaking of sponsors of the CoCo Fest, our favorite sponsor, Retro Rewind, they're the official sponsor of CoCo Fest. And, you know, it wasn't too long ago when I filmed a little tribute to one of my favorite devices that they sell, the CoCo SDC. Aaron, let's learn about it, shall we? Are you ready to take the plunge into the exciting world of the Tandy Color Computer? Have you tried emulation and found it to be confusing and unreliable?
The hell is Bitbanger?
It's time to get yourself a real CoCo and get yourself over to retrorewind.ca to get it out with everything you need to enter the CoCo universe. The CoCo SDC is the fastest, easiest way to jump into the nirvana that is gaming on the Tandy Color Computer. A preloaded SD card is already included, so just pop it in your CoCo and away you go. Pick up your CoCo SDC at Retro Rewind and be sure to use the promo code AMIGOS10 to save 10% off the already low price. Thank you to retrorewind.ca for sponsoring the CoCo Show.
All right, Boat. You know, this week's game is CoCoBan, right? And so we could sit here and ramble on about it like a couple of dipsticks, or we could introduce the man that made the game. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Paul Thayer.
Hey, Paul.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
It's Dandy. We're so happy you could join us here to talk about CoCoBan. Do you pronounce it CoCoBan? Is that the way you pronounce it?
That's how I've always said it.
Very
some
good.
of those Canadians, I guess they like to say ban or something like that. I don't know.
They got problems with the vowels and stuff up there. I think that's part of it.
Sometimes they use too many.
So, you know, I've got this. I want to go over. I've got a factoid sheet here, and you can confirm or deny this stuff. But I want to ask you some stuff about the development of this. According to what I've got here, you released this November 2022. That seems to check out. It says here that this game was derived from CoCoBan and PicoBan. Now, is PicoBan, is that a Pico 8 game?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So are you a Pico 8 guy?
I have written a couple of different games in it that I haven't released, but yes, I like it. Now,
for those that don't know what that is, and stop me if I'm wrong here, Paul, but basically the Pico 8 is basically like sort of it's a sort of a pretend system. It was a system that was never released. It's more of a programming structure to make games, and with a certain set of parameters, and it's proven to be quite popular. I know the guys over at Pixel Gaiden, I talk about it all the time, and then the way you play the games is like a super cheap emulation package you pick up, and then I believe all the games are free. Am I getting that right, Paul?
It sounds like it. Yep.
Very good, very good. And so you're a big proponent of this thing?
Yeah, I like it. They call it a virtual console, I guess is actually the term.
That's better than pretend console, which is right.
And so, I mean, originally how I saw this game was I was on Cool Math Games with my daughter.
Yeah, I know all about that site. We're continuously trying to get our students not to go there during class.
So, yeah, I went there and I saw this game on that. And I didn't realize like the boot up screen for the Pico 8 and everything that was on there was like the virtual console. Later on, during the development of this game, I was talking to one of my good friends, Paul Fiscarelli, about it. And he's like, well, you know what Pico 8 is, don't you? And I was like, nope. And then he showed me. So then I bought a subscription to that for like $18 and learned some stuff on how to make that work. And yeah, anything on there kind of actually ties really well into the CoCo because the screen resolution is very similar. Not exact, but it's very similar.
That's interesting because I know there's a ridiculously huge library for the Pico 8. Do you see a path in the future that maybe some of that stuff might be handily ported over to the CoCo if somebody took the chance to do it?
I think so. Not by me.
Disclaimer.
No, I'm just saying. I made this one as kind of I'm working on a larger project, and I had to learn a lot of things about developing games for assembly language, and this was my second one. And so I kind of got a lot of the libraries written that I'm going to use, and learned a lot of techniques while I was doing it. So
Very good. But Bo, just for the record, have you heard of the Pico 8? I mean, you're a super fan. I don't know.
Well, I'm a super fan of Eric Nelson, and
Yeah.
so that's how I know about it.
I see.
It's one of those concepts that I think is super cool, but it's not something that I've looked into.
Yeah,
So-
I'm the same way. Exact same way.
who's
So,
Eric
Paul-
Nelson? Sorry.
Oh, Eric
He-
Nelson.
he-
He's one of the hosts of the Pixel Guide In podcast.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, he's a big proponent of that. So they really put it over on there. That's the only way I know about anything on there is from that.
I'm writing down Pixel Guiden right now so I can check.
Oh
those
yeah,
out.
check them out. They're outstanding.
So, Paul, tell us. I mean, obviously, there's tons of different concepts out there to make games. This wasn't your first rodeo in terms of CoCo game, right?
No, it was my second CoCo. Well, assembly language CoCo game. I used to try to program games for the Tandy Color Computer back in the day when I was like 9-10 years old, but I had no clue. But yeah, this was my second rodeo in assembly language for the 6809 assembly to be more specific.
And
Yep.
when you saw this on Cool Math Games, were you just like, this is something that I could easily move over to the CoCo? Did you play any of the existing CoCoBan games on the CoCo before you did this, or did you just dive right in?
I did not, because I actually wasn't even familiar with what CoCoBan was when
Oh,
I
okay.
started this venture. I just really liked the game, and I thought, the graphic style could port over pretty well, and there was some elements that I could learn. And while I was playing it, I had some ideas of the expansions that I made to this particular version of the game.
Now, this is a game. Let's talk about the technical specs. This is a game that requires a Color Computer 3, correct?
That is correct.
And tell us about the thought process behind making this a CoCo 3 only game.
Well, I don't particularly care for the 1 or the 2.
Yeah, no
Good
good.
reason, then.
I'm 41, and I got the Color Computer 3 when I was 5. So
Yeah.
pretty young, right?
We're the same
And-
age, Paul. We're the same age.
Sweet. All right. I sent some sarcasm in there, maybe.
No,
No?
we're exactly
Okay.
the same
All right.
age.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. All
You're
right.
the
81.
two youngest Coco fans on Earth,
Yeah.
by the way.
I mean, I think that there's a lot of cool things done on the 2, but I really like the 16 color depth. And it's just the CoCo 3 is what I've always tried to program on. So
Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense. And I would say that the CoCo 3 offers the most potential, of course, because of the expanded capabilities. And
Yep.
I always would rather see CoCo 3 only games because I, like you, do not care about the CoCo 1 and CoCo 2. I mean, if you've got a CoCo 3, why not use it to its fullest capabilities?
Yep. And one of the things that I wanted to set out to do was to make sure that this game was playable on 128K. On a real console that doesn't need any kind of modifications, just to kind of open up the market to a lot more people to kind of see, what my game development kind of has to offer, now and what's in the future. So
Yeah. Now, we'll get into your future plans in a little bit, but I want to know how you come up with these puzzles, because I am not somebody that has a mind that can come up with things like this. I have a hard enough time solving puzzles, let alone making my own. Do you plot things out on graph paper? Do you already have it fully formed in your mind and you just put it down on the screen? What do you do?
So, well, I cheated a little bit in this game because it's based on Pico 8 or CoCoBan, which has 15 levels, and they're all in here. So
Okay.
there's 15 levels already made up for me. I suck at making puzzles too, Bo. I mean, it's completely honest.
It's not easy. It's not an easy thing to do, for sure.
So one of the things that helped me was making the level editor, which I made that really actually early, probably too early. I didn't even have any of the game mechanics working at the time when I first made it. But once I was able to make a level editor that had working game mechanics, it was definitely a lot easier that way. A lot of the levels that I created were actually inspired by other video games.
Mhm.
Pac-Man. Yeah, I can't even think of all of them, to be honest with you. But yeah, and I'd made a puzzle game before for my nephew on the PC. It's called Hotel Elevator Man.
Oh.
Nobody knows about it because I didn't release it publicly. at all. But yeah, it's a platformer puzzle game. So I learned a lot of stuff there, mainly being that puzzles are hard because you're trying to make this challenge and you think you have an idea of how it's going to work. And then you have some player during playtesting who breaks it in like 2 seconds. And you're like, oh, well, I guess I need to make that challenging.
Yeah.
And it's equally as hard, in my opinion, making even games that aren't puzzles that have levels, because you try to find that balance between making something challenging and fun. Because if it's too easy, then it's boring.
Mhm.
But sometimes you get into this spot where you make just everything's just ridiculously too hard. Like I remember making one of my first games. It was a platformer game that I made back in like 2003 on the Game Maker development system, and you had to unlock 3 doors, and I hid like all of the keys behind trees, and you had to just like kind of guess that they were there somewhere. It was
We play a lot of Amiga games like that.
Yeah.
I am
I was
very
thinking.
intrigued by the Amiga lately. I'm not gonna go there though because I have some goals for the CoCo. But if I go to Amiga, I'm probably not gonna go back.
Yeah.
It's a really cool computer. I never even knew about it back in the day, but
Yeah,
just
well, I
watching
mean, it was
you
a
guys-
non-factor in the United States, so it's easy to see why you didn't.
Well, yeah.
Tell us about the playtesting that you did. I mean, obviously you got some people from the community. How did you finagle that?
Well, I hit up people on Discord,
Mhm.
and honestly, I didn't get that many. Curtis kind of did some testing just because he helped me program, and I kind of forced him into some of the play testing too. He doesn't like this style of game, I don't think, very much. And then my nephew, but really the only person from the community that actually did like pre-release play testing besides Curtis, Paul Fiscarelli, and Chet Simpson, who are all people who helped me develop, was Mark Overholzer.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah.
he instantly complained that he couldn't pull. And yeah, the space bar versus enter thing in the menu that's been a point of debate for a long time. And of course, the infamous single undo.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
believe they were just complaining about this last Saturday.
Yeah. There was
better at the game.
There were quite a few people think you made a major blunder by not including a single undo. For me, listen, man, CoCoBan ain't for losers and it ain't for cheaters, and that's what you are if you use
That's
an
me,
undo
Al.
button.
The one thing about it is, obviously, if you can't put at a game like this, if you put a pull in there, it would ruin the game. You can't, obviously.
Mhm.
So I mean, that's out.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, in all honesty, you've got it set up so you can instantly start over.
Right.
So as far as I'm concerned, undoing, I mean, yeah, there were occasions where I would do something that I didn't mean to do, but hey, them's the breaks, brother. That's the way it goes.
Well,
you got to start over.
I understand too from the standpoint of some of the later levels, because the move list gets huge, right?
Mhm.
And so I get it from that aspect, but like and I guess I kind of agree with them in a little bit, because the levels that Paul and I made for the game and my son, I think they were a lot more complex than the base 15 that came with CoCoBan, and by the time like I was done developing this game, I could beat it within 15-20 minutes.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's hard to, well, I mean, you play the same puzzles 100 times.
Right. Well, it's this, again, it's the same thing that we hear about, when we talk about all these really, really difficult Amiga, ZX Spectrum games, whatever, is that there was no playtesting back in the day.
Nope.
And when you're programming a game, you're going to be real good at it because you do it over and over again. And you start to lose the concept of, how difficult is this for somebody that's never played it before. And that's always the
absolutely.
challenge.
Plus, if you put an undo button in here, for example, because one thing I like about this, I mean, listen, I'm not going to lie to you, man. I'm never getting past those 15 first level. I'm dumb as a sack of hammers. I had to watch Boats playthrough to get past the first level. I'm an idiot. Now, I got into the groove. I got to like level 7 or 8 before I completely was befuddled. But I like the idea that you've got the timer on there, so you can go in there and compete for time. So like you said, even if you get really good at the game, you can at least shoot for a quicker time. And if you put an undo button in there, that also sort of screws
let me
that up
ask you a
too.
question, because I think in a perfect world, what I would like to see is two modes where you have basically exploration mode and high score mode, and maybe the exploration mode has an undo button, but you don't get scored, and then that opens it up, and then you do get the speed running when you get into the the other mode. But how much overhead would that be in terms of fitting this onto the cartridge or into the game or whatever, making two different modes like that?
I don't think it would have been that bad. I'm going to tell you, I wish I would have talked to you about it during development, because I'm not going to make that change now.
Oh, sure.
But
It's too late. It's too late.
Get busy, Paul.
But,
Get in there.
Yeah, right. But I don't think it would have really been that bad. I went through 9 revs, 9 different builds of this game, and each time I was reducing the amount of memory I was using for the actual program. First couple drafts, man, I was running into 24K for the program, and I'm just like, that's not even right. I should not be using that much memory. And thanks to, people like Curtis who've helped me get better as a programmer, I was down to less than 16K for the final build. So the game mechanics wouldn't really be that, you wouldn't change anything with the way that the functions work in the library for the game mechanics. You would just basically omit the timer from running. Or maybe you don't, right? And then adding an undo, especially if it's only one move, you just have to have some sort of buffer for that, and that would have been very minimal. So I think it could have been done. Yeah.
Now your game is for sale. I'm sorry. This is a name your own price, deal on itch. I'm curious about your experience with itch as a platform, as a programmer, putting your game on there. What's that process like?
It's really simple, and it was a lot better than what I did for my first game. So the first game was like, hey, I'm gonna post in the Facebook community. You guys come check this out and order from me. And for my experience, it was kind of rough too. But at that time, I was selling physical media. I got out of that. It was just too much work. It was cool. It was really rad having full color glossy manuals, and you're like, oh, this is so cool, because that's what you liked when you were a kid.
Yeah.
But I think the customer experience too was really it was just piss poor. I mean, they'd have to email me, I'd send them a digital copy, and they'd wait, stuff like that. And I guess it wasn't too terrible, but Itch is like amazing. I can just go on there and upload my game in about 5-10 minutes. And it's open for more than just the CoCo community. So if people are like bopping around looking at classic retro video game platforms and find emulators or whatever, and they're like, hey, I wonder if there's games for this, they can find it on itch.io. I decided to have it be name your own price because it's not technically my original game. I mean, there was elements of it that were original to me. But also, I had a good friend of mine release what I consider to be a Nintendo quality type game for the CoCo 3, and he didn't charge a dime. So I'm like, well, this isn't even comparable. So I shouldn't be charging any money for it if I don't have to.
What is that game, by the way?
Digger 3.
Oh yeah.
Oh
yeah,
yes. Yeah, that is great. That's a real good one. Yeah.
I
like the name your price angle. I mean, I always like that for games, and I think it's fair too to do it that way. Because I mean, listen, everybody, there's nothing wrong with getting a little jack off of the game, especially if you take a long time to write it, and the distribution's nice. I can understand going the digital only route. Because I've just from stuff from I know Nick has been up and down with trying to do the send boxes and stuff. He's always had some kind of wacky issues going on with that. So I know it can be a trifle to do it. So I can understand how that goes.
If I didn't have kids and I didn't work full time, that'd be a different story.
Right.
Yeah.
I think there's still room. I mean, there's still room in the marketplace for somebody to come along that can expedite that. That just nobody has yet, because nobody's figured out how to make enough money, because production costs, is so expensive doing cardboard boxes and glossy manuals and stuff like that. So.
I still have a ton of, I bought 50 SD cards. I got a ton of them for the SDC, and I got you have to buy the Avery labels in a 500 pack. So I got a ton of those. Printing the glossy manuals wasn't too terrible, because I work at a company that has a print shop
Oh,
there.
that's
So
convenient.
I just made some. GE, like, you can't hear this. Nobody from General Electric is watching.
Yeah.
I used some company resources. So
We all get
that's
away
great.
with that.
Tell us about what was your first game, Paul?
the first color computer game,
Yeah,
that was Timberman.
Timberman.
So a port of the phone app.
Now, I don't know if you know this or not, Paul, but
Yeah.
last year, Aaron and I hosted our very first retro computer festival here in lovely West Virginia, and we actually used Timberman as our CoCo High Score Challenge game.
I heard about that, actually.
And it was by far the most popular and most competitive any of the games we did, wasn't it, Bo?
Yes, absolutely. It was a huge, massive hit. So thank you.
I'm glad it was a
for
massive
doing
hit.
that.
I hate that game now.
Because you played it so much?
I don't know, man. I don't know what it is. I'm like, this thing is just, there's not much to it. You know, I like games that have a little bit more to it, you know, but
people, I'm telling you that my kid loved it too. He was a big fan of that one.
Cool.
You know, and it was a fun game. So and I will say, you know, we haven't really delved too much into this one, Bo. So just to give people who are listening and wonder what exactly we're talking about here. Of course, this is CoCoBan, and it's a puzzle game, and it's pretty. I mean, by default, you're a character trying to leave the screen, and to do that, you'll have to move around objects to capture other objects or reveal objects that will unlock your way out of the level. I mean, is that pretty much the long and short of it, Bo? Because there's more to it than just getting a key. Sometimes there are other obstacles.
Yeah, you've got to
complete
complete a varying set of objectives to be able to move on to the next level.
But what was that game we put on the Amiga a couple months ago that was like this?
There's a game called Exit on the Amiga.
That's right.
And Paul, if you ever get into the Amiga, you should check this one out because it's very similar to CoCoBan, and it's got a lot of the same sort of extra things that you've put into CoCoBan in terms of having to fill the holes with some of the with things and having to, you know, you can't cross certain spaces more than once and things like that. But it's got a really nice Amiga patina on it, if you will. And it's one of these games that we never heard of before, and it's a real great game. So you might be sick of CoCoBan games at this point, never play it, but should you ever become non-sick of it, check it out.
No, I'm actually I wish that people would take advantage of the level editor in here and send them to me because I really like this game. I like solving puzzles in video games, and I'm just very intrigued to see what people have to offer. Because I've always liked playing it, and I feel with some of the expansions that we made with it too, it opened up a lot of doors for creative level design. So
you said the level editor is actually it's available within the game itself, right?
Yeah, it's on the menu.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep, and then you can play the levels. It gets saved to the disc, and you can play them.
That's fantastic. Now, say somebody is using an emulator to play this, and they create a level there. How does that work? You just save the disc within the emulator, and then you would send that to you for your perusal.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of different tools that will extract files off of virtual disks.
Mm-hmm.
I use the image tool that comes with MAME, but that's what you do is you mount the disk right into whatever tool you're going to use. You extract the ulevels.bin file, and then you email it or Discord it or Facebook chat it to your friend, and then they put it on their disk, and then they play your levels.
Okay.
Yeah, it's real simple. Just send the whole disk. And I will say, and you mentioned it there, I've tried this on my actual CoCo and it worked fine. But I thought, let's really kick the tires on this thing. I actually played this on MES, which on the CoCo 3 MES emulator. The MAME, it's MAME, but it used to be called MES, and it played flawlessly on there without any trouble. So it's definitely something that's easy to run if you don't have an actual CoCo 3, which I'd say the majority of people list this probably don't. I mean, they're not that easy to get anymore. And if you don't have one, get it soon because
Yep.
they're not going to be real much longer. But this is a great little one of those little distraction games. You know, I'm going to tell you, we played Exit a couple months ago, like Boat mentioned, on the Amiga, and I loved that game, but I was not very good at it. And this game, I was very similar experience. I mean, listen, the controls are literally printed on the screen, which I like, and the fact that it's perfectly obvious what you're supposed to do in the game. Now, it's so obvious that it makes you infuriated when you can't do it, which is what I was often. This is one of those games I had to get up and walk away. I had to come back. Boat had recorded the first one was a 5 or 6 or 7 levels, Boat, and I often referred to Boat's gameplay. I was like, what am I doing wrong? And then I would scream at Boat because it was something so simple. I was kicking myself.
Yep.
You know, I was like, oh man, I don't know if I've got the patience to ever get good at this. But it was a fun time, and I think I like the interface that you've got on here. I like the control method. I thought that was a pretty smart move, actually, the way you have it set up. I like the fact that you can instantly quit and start over. There's not a lot of rigmaroles in between, you know, restarting the level. That's a killer on games like this. If there's some kind of crap in between you dying, it's horrible. It's the worst thing. And this one starts right back up. I mean, if you're into these sorts of games, I can't imagine anyone not digging this one. What do you think, Bode?
Yeah, I mean, this is, if you like puzzle games and you like games that they're puzzly, but you immediately know what you're supposed to do. It's not like a puzzle game like Myst where you're just stuck in this world and you kind of have to figure out the mechanics on your own. Like, you know what everything does and it's your job to solve it. Then this is a go-to game on the CoCo. Now, tell us about your next endeavor, Paul, on the CoCo. What are you working on?
Well, I'd really quickly like to talk back about the playtesting really quick.
Oh, sure.
Because Aaron sharing his experience there. I had my nephew and my older brother Tim actually play too. And I typically like to observe while somebody's doing some play testing for me, because it's really interesting. You can almost feel how somebody's thinking sometimes. And it was quite interesting to watch different people play and have varying results and doing different things. Like, for instance, my brother Tim, right? I'm watching him play via Discord, and he's sitting there on this level for like 15 seconds and he's literally doing nothing. And I'm like, are you gonna move or something? He's like, well, I'm just trying to figure it out before I even start wasting any of my time. So he was a real cerebral type game approach. And then other people go in there and they just start moving stuff around and breaking things and everything. So it was really fun. It was a lot of, that was probably one of my favorite parts about making video games is, secondly, I mean, the number one reason I do it is I like to add content to something that I really love, and give people something to do. But number two, it's really enjoyable to watch people either struggle. Sometimes struggling is really amusing to me. That's type of stuff is
cool. As a game designer, you don't want people to breeze through your game. You want them to have to think. So
no problem there. I will say, you never want to be around me for a lot of play testing, because if you'd been in the room while I was playing this, you may have been hurt very badly, because I was so. I have a low threshold for. I live a pretty stress-free life, as Bo will tell you, and so I don't. This game's the same reason I quit playing chess. I'm not good at thinking moves ahead, I get aggravated. And man, this game was driving me nuts. Now, I will say it was very gratifying. It's extremely gratifying when you can get past the level, but man, the process of getting there it was driving me nuts, man.
So
hey,
I'm actually curious to know, you got up to like level 7. You said, Boat, where did you get to?
You can see exactly where I could not get past on this playthrough. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I got to, I think it's either level 7 or level 8, but there's something that you've got to do that I could not figure out how to. It's the one where you have to push everything in place and then you got to somehow get back to where you were. And it's this one right here. I could not get past this.
I want to bring it up for you, Boat 7. I hit the wall here too. I was like, what am I supposed to do here? And now that you tell me I know there were so many levels in this, and I thought to myself, I must be the dumbest guy playing this game. So when I looked and asked Bo if this is where he got, I felt less dumb. Or maybe I thought he was dumber than I thought he was. I don't know, one of the two. But yeah, this is a game, and it's one of those games you got to sit around and ponder. I can understand the guy just sitting there and not doing a move because you sort of have to do that. Did our listeners, Boat, have any more luck with this than we did?
Let me check out our reviews channel here, Paul. In case you weren't familiar, on the show, we always have some people on our Discord community weigh in with their thoughts, and it looks like we have a few. We start out with Canadian Retro Things. He says CoCoBan can be a frustrating game, but not so much that you want to rage quit. It's just hard enough on some levels that you have that voice in the back of your mind saying, I can beat this. If and when you get past the hard levels, you're rewarded with some easier but still fun levels. Once you beat the game, you can start designing your own levels for people to try. So this game should deliver an unlimited supply of puzzle-solving goodness as people design and make available new levels. L. Curtis Boyle.
All hell.
Can't wait to hear what he has to say.
He says, CoCoBan is a brand new puzzle game done in a charming lower pixel resolution, but full 16 colors with digitized sound effects. Based on the classic CoCoBan, of which the CoCo has already had at least 2 versions of, it adds in elements from the much more recent PicoBan and some original ideas by its author, Paul Thayer. Paul has purposefully not explained every piece or opponent that you will encounter in the game. He wants the player to experience feelings of surprise and discovery, in addition to being so frustrated that you want to hurtle something at the wall. If you are into puzzle games, this is an excellent one. A classic with a lot of extra things added to learn and explore for 32 levels. And then you can create your own and share them with other CoCoBan enthusiasts. I don't have as much time anymore to spend on these long play puzzlers, but I still had a heck of a lot of fun getting as far as I have. 8.5 out of 10 for me. And finally, Mr. Dave 6309, no slouch in the CoCo game developer department himself, says CoCoBan is a great looking CoCo 3 game, and as you progress, it not only gets harder, but more interesting. Very good game. So there you have it. The community has spoken and they love it.
Thank you. Or should I say you're welcome?
Yeah, there you go. You never, Curtis pointed out, you never answered the question as to what you're working on. So what can you tell us about your next project?
I'm getting there.
Yeah, okay. Somebody cut him off. I don't know who it was.
No,
it doesn't sound like me.
No, nobody cut me off. I just said I wanted to talk about something else real quick before I got there. So the big project that all of these, the Timberman and the CoCoBan were for, was to learn how to do game mechanics in assembly language, which is a pain in the ass. And I will mention that this game is designed to be done in stages. So, just like the development of the game, if you've been going hard for a couple weeks on it, and then you need to walk away for 3 months because you want to hurl something at the wall. Yeah, that's what it's like. And then come back later and play it some more. My next game is called Buff Commando. The idea is to take all of the 1980s and 1990s action movies and make that a video game experience in a platformer. It is a beat 'em up turned run and gun. So when you start, it will be a beat 'em up, and then you will acquire a special gun without revealing too much of the storyline, which is a totally ridiculous and stupid storyline just to go along with the 80s action movie theme. So yeah, that's what I'm working on now. Same resolution. I decided to kind of go with that because I had some character designs for more of the Nintendo, like 256 by, I think that was 256 by
320, I think, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Or no, 256 by 182, I think is Nintendo.
Yeah. So I had some character designs for that resolution, and I liked them. They were pretty cool. And then I don't know, I just love this mode in the CoCo 3. Like, you don't have to use as much memory. It still looks pretty cool. It's got a good retro look to it. And so I made some of the sprites in an 8x8, kind of like you would in Pico 8. And I thought they were pretty cool looking, so I decided to do that. Also contemplating putting the game on Pico 8. Additionally, I was trying to, and I may never get to this, but I wanted to develop an actual like drag and drop video game maker for the Color Computer 3 2, which was going to be the same type of resolution. So all of the game mechanic type of stuff is all built in, all the the functions libraries there, but it's a drag and drop interface, kind of like Game Maker is, if anybody's ever used that. But also with the ability to write custom scripts if you wanted to.
Yeah.
So I was trying to
That'd be awesome.
I was trying to kind of get it to fit into that game engine as well. So that's kind of the reason why I stuck with this this mode and 8x8 sprites. And so far it's going pretty good. Right now I'm kind of just in the initial stages of figuring out the rest of the storyline, because I have basically the first 5 scenes figured out, getting some graphics drawn and implementing them onto the computer. I want to do some cut scenes on this one too.
Wow.
So yeah, well, this one's going to be 512K.
Okay.
So we're trying to figure out how to do some 4-voice music with digital sound effects, and I have some really great people that I'm working with all the time. Paul Fiscarelli, Simon Jonason, or the Invisible Man, as he likes to go by. He's basically the guy who taught me how to do assembly language. And then Chet Simpson really kind of put me into the more advanced level with video game design using assembly language. I mean, he showed me so many concepts I would have never even imagined or thought of on my own. It was amazing. So I got some really good people working with me on it, and that's kind of the target and the goal. So we'll see you guys with that game in about 7 years.
It sounds incredibly ambitious. The theme of it. We I don't know if my brother and me or I do a show called ARG Presents, and we just covered a game called Broforce on there.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if you ever heard of, but this sounds like right in my wheelhouse. I was like, man, when you were talking, I'm like, holy smokes, this sounds great. So I'm all for it.
It's funny because Broforce actually came out after I had this idea, and
Yeah.
I'm like, did these guys hear me talking at the coffee shop or what? Because like this is exactly what I love that game because of the way that it introduced. So not only do you have different characters with different skill sets, but they're randomly selected as you go through. It's so cool. And then they have the special ops missions where you have to utilize the special characteristics of that particular person to get through the level. Oh my God, such a wonderful game. Well done.
It is an outstanding game. Hey, listen, Paul, would you mind answering a few questions before we go?
No, not at all.
I've got a few questions in the chat if you don't mind. Our buddy Rob Fleck O'Hara asks, is it easier to port other Pico games to the CoCo? Are the languages similar at all?
The languages are not similar at all, and I don't know how easy it is.
I see. So yeah, but you did say the resolutions are somewhere in the ballpark.
Yeah. So the Pico 8 is 128 by 128. This particular resolution of CoCoBan is 128 by 112. So you lose a little bit of resolution. Pico 8 has a set palette. There's 32 colors you can pick total. The CoCo lets you do 16 out of 64, obviously. Pico 8 uses a Lua-based custom language. It's custom, but it's based with Lua. The biggest thing is Pico 8 comes with all the libraries of the functions and pre-written commands. If you're doing a program in assembly language, you're making that all yourself. Assembly language is like if you were to take the bits and pieces of like assembling a car together, all of the different parts that make everything function, and the parts of those parts. So you have a carburetor that you need to build, but you have like 60 parts inside of a carburetor. You have to put all those pieces together yourself, which is awesome, but also tedious.
Yeah.
Which is why we have libraries now.
Understandable. L. Curtis Boyle has a question here. Now, this may be some kind of inside baseball, but maybe you'll know what he's talking about. He asked me to ask you about what he is figuring out for the controls on Buff Commando.
Oh, yeah, we had this
and
discussion.
alternative controls, he also says.
We had this discussion, so I'm still working on the joystick interface with it. What I want to do with that, and there's a few different options on the table. The color computer community has a Sega Genesis adapter, which I think you can get for around $20 to $30. I like the Sega Genesis controller. I have no idea how to program for the interface and haven't been able to kind of uncover how. But I'm getting one sent to me. Well, actually, I bought one, so I could try to figure that out. There's the CoCo PSG, which also offers sound at a with a different processor completely, so you don't have to take as much processing power out of the CoCo. And it has Sega Genesis type adapters or Atari type adapters on it. Also got a technician at my work working on a custom joystick that's based on the Super Nintendo that we're trying to use one joystick port for. Because ideally, I'd like to have a joystick that has no adapters. You just plug it in and you start gaming. So that's what we all want to do, right? Simple as possible. So I got somebody working on that because I'm going to do a name your own price again with the game. So there's that. Trying to figure out how to do it on the deluxe. Haven't decided the joystick yet, but on the keyboard, I'm definitely going to have keyboard interface as a second option. I have a few ideas from some people who are good gamers. John being one of them. He and I talked about, allowing the user to input keys to customize the controls themselves.
I like the ZX often does.
Mm.
I think it's possibly, I know it's possible, and I don't think it's going to be that difficult to do because the way that the keyboard works on the CoCo is it's probably a lot of computers. I don't know anything else about anything other than the CoCo, but they have like a matrix. So they have a couple of different registers, one you write to and one you read from, and you want to send a value and you get a value back. And I think you could just easily make a table of those different values and then test for a key to be hit. And then when that key is established, you just take those values and put them in and associate it with that movement. And then Ken Waters actually had a really cool idea of using, because there's 3 buttons, so you have kick, punch, and jump, using the Alt, Control, and Shift on your left hand on the Color Computer 3, and then the arrow keys with your right hand. So, and that actually converts very well to kind of PC emulation as well, because on your left side of your keyboard, you usually have your Shift, Control, and Alt relatively close to each other. And then on the right side, you have your arrow keys. Easier for me to program, and I think it seems kind of easy. Or good for the players. So
interesting. It's interesting to hear someone mull these choices over as they get to. I mean, it's something you don't think about that much, but yeah, I can see where that'd be something I had to really put a lot of thought into.
Yeah, controls is way more complicated than I ever thought it would be. But
yeah, and at the end of the day, the thing is, you're not just developing a game, but you're really igniting a movement. Because if this game comes out with that Super Nintendo stick, if they sort of launch at the same time, one that plugs directly in, then what you're doing is you're opening the floodgates for everybody to start designing for this thing. And then all of a sudden, bam, we have an actual digital controller for the CoCo that's like the accepted standard. And it just makes that side of things so much more enticing.
You'd love that, wouldn't you, Bo?
Yeah.
Super Nintendo controller.
Yeah,
I
man.
bet. Hey, I got 2 more questions here for you, Paul.
Sorry if I'm taking too much time, guys.
No, not at all. It's not very often you get to look behind the curtain, as it were. Our buddy Super Tech Boy asks, what other systems do you program for?
Currently none, but I have done some games on the PC. I use Game Maker from Yo-Yo Games to do that. Originally, about 20 years ago, it was made by a guy named Mark Overmars from Denmark. and it's a really awesome application. Even back then, it was great. And back then, it was $18 for a full registered version. Now you're going to be paying a couple hundred, but yeah, but you can get it for free. At least last time I tried, you can get it for free and make games. It just has a little thing that pops up. It says "Made with Game Maker" on it. But that's pretty much it. My friend Sheldon McDonald is trying to get me to dabble in the Sega Genesis. I'm teeter-tottering because I have some goals on the color computer. It's dear to my heart, man. I mean, it was like, while I had friends, growing up that had Nintendos, I mean, I didn't get my first Nintendo till probably 1990. But I had that color computer at home, and the whole idea of being able to make games on the console that you're playing was just always really cool to me. I'd rather make one than play one any day. So Sega Genesis, and I definitely want to get into the Amiga at some point, but right now just CoCo and a PC.
It's funny, there's a follow-up question from Super Tech Boy that's along those lines. He asks, when can we expect Amiga Bon?
Yeah, as soon as I don't even know what processor that computer has.
It's at the Motorola 68,000. So you'd have
That's
a little
the same
more
as
jack.
the Genesis.
Yeah. They're actually very similar in a lot of ways. There's a lot of stuff ported back and forth between the two. So yeah, maybe you learn one and just make the seamless transition to the other one.
Yeah, the language is easy. The hardware setup is, you'd have to learn that, but that's usually not too bad either. So
listen, before we cut you loose, Paul, I want to ask, where can people pick up your game? I've got the address here written down. I want to read it. I want to make sure I get this right. It's pthayer100.itch.io/CoCoBan. We'll have the link underneath the show. It's again pthayer100.itch.io/CoCoBan, all one word. And that's where they go to take care of business and to purchase the game, correct?
that sounds right.
Beautiful, beautiful. Bo, what do you think? Pretty interesting game, and we really appreciate Paul coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, in addition to Paul, we want to thank all the fine folks that make the CoCo Show happen. And that includes our CoCo Show Game Selection Committee members, Canadian Retro Things, L. Curtis Boyle, Robert Murphy, and Steve Rasmussen. Thank you guys for selecting CoCoBan for us. And of course, our CoCo Show Patreon supporters, Mr. Dave 6309, O'Brien's Retro and Vintage, Buttons, and William Becker. Thank you guys so much for supporting the CoCo Show. And as always, you can go over to patreon.com/the CoCo Show to give us a couple bucks a month. We'd really appreciate it. And we also have a goal up there. If we can get to $200 a month in support on Patreon, the CoCo Show will morph from a monthly show to a weekly show, and that would be super cool.
Oh yeah.
Also, we broadcast the show live on Twitch. You can join the chat at twitch.tv/Amigos Retro Gaming. It's always a good time on here. And Aaron, what are we going to be playing next month on the CoCo Show?
Let's find out. I'm interested to see if Paul has played this one. It's Module Man.
Module Man.
I've never heard of this, Bo. Have you ever heard of this one?
No.
Paul, Module Man?
No, sir.
That's what they picked, so that's what we played. Module Man next month. It's an exploration into the unknown on this one, Bo.
Yeah. So, thank you as always for listening. We will see you next time, and until then, all hail
L. Curtis Boyle.
Oh.